I have the wonderful director of the Arts Council Santa Cruz, Michelle Williams, here today. Michelle, thank you so much for coming up.
Thanks so much for having me.
Michelle Williams has been the director of the Arts Council. Is it 7 years now, Michelle?
It is. Yeah.
7 years, and Michelle has done wonders for Michelle and her incredible staff of magicians have done an amazing amount of work. Of course, they have been the stewards for the Open Studios program here in Santa Cruz and Watsonville. We have a South and North County kind of weekend that happens first weekends of October, and that's been going on. Is it
32 years this year.
32 years with literally hundreds of artists opening up their homes and their studios for guests and potential customers of their work, and it's a truly multimedia, from photography to sculptures to jewelry makers. And the beautiful thing about it is that you go into their studio. These artists work so hard to get their studio in a proper place so that they can have guests. And then you can see their process and how they make their art. And it's an incredible art education. And then you'll probably remember, if you've been around, the big green signs that happen every October on the weekends, and that is a part of the Arts Council. So, Michelle, tell us, what else does the Arts Council do for Santa Cruz and Watsonville?
Sure. Well, as you said, we are a countywide organization, and we were incorporated in 1979. So, and our first programming was grant making. So for all of these years, all the intervening years, we have been one of the most significant arts funders in Santa Cruz County, and we fund everything from specialized projects by individual artists to the major players of the arts in Santa Cruz: Cumbia Jazz, Cabrilla Music Festival, Santa Cruz Shakespeare, and everything in between. So grant making is incredibly important to us. The Open Studios Tour, as you said, we've been running for 32 years, and also we're the largest non-school provider of arts education in the county. Last year, we served more than 17,000 students across the county. We also do initiatives such as Ebb and Flow, which unite multiple partners to enliven the Riverwalk and the Tannery Arts Center in downtown Santa Cruz, and then a number of initiatives to support the greater community in connecting to one another and helping artists and arts organizations thrive.
So you are also a part of a bigger organization. That's the California Arts Council. Is that right? How does the Santa Cruz Arts Council fit in within the California Arts Council? Sure.
So there is a network of local arts agencies, and that's the technical term for what the Arts Council in Santa Cruz is, all across California. I think all but 2 counties in the state of California have a local arts agency, and we are funded, partially funded by the California Arts Council. And there's also a state arts agency in every state in the United States. And all of these interconnect. The California Arts Council funds several of our programs and also is a convener and a connector, much like we are a convener and connector here in Santa Cruz. So they're somewhat of a parent organization, and we are boots on the ground for them.
Right. And so you have what they call rolling grant procedure, which is kind of new. It's been a couple years that you've implemented this change. It used to be that the grants opened once a year and you had to apply. It was a pretty complicated kind of situation, and you've been able to really streamline it, I believe, with your incredible staff. So now it's much easier to apply for grants, to keep your applications are actually like in the cloud on the Arts Council servers, so that you don't have to continuously a lot of things, artist statements don't change that much. Usually artists of course it changes, but you have core values, inspirations that, could be something that you don't need to maybe update a little bit, but not have to recreate every year. And now you don't have to do that because it's actually saved in your profile in the Arts Council grants section. And now you have it, how is it, 4 times a year?
Well, it used to, so we've been playing with this a lot, with the idea of how can we provide the greatest service to our community while also being smart about how we use our time internally. We have experimented with 4 cycles, 3 cycles. Right now we're at 2 cycles.
Oh.
So for right now, we are about to open up our next grants application process, which will cover any projects happening between July and December, I believe. And that, it's always that balance of how do we make it as easy as possible for people to apply for funds, and how do we efficiently deliver these services and these grant funds. And your emphasis about how difficult applying for grants can be, I think, is really important. We work every year to further streamline, to further simplify how our grant making process happens. With the eye on, we want to fund incredible artists who are doing great work in the community, not necessarily fund people who know how to write a grant. And sometimes these are skill sets that aren't shared. We also provide one-on-one service for artists or organizations who have never applied, and we call them first-time applicants, and we actually consider them separately from other applicants in order to give them a better chance and to do what we can to work back and forth to strengthen their application. It's really interesting, though. Any form of standardized application still creates barriers for some artists and some people. So we're continually exploring and thinking about what are wildly different ways we could fund things in this community that don't look at all like what they look like today. So we tend to live in that curious space, and I think more changes, positive changes, are coming down the line.
You're listening to the executive director of the Arts Council of Santa Cruz, Michelle Williams. She is here today to talk to us about some potential, problems that we might be facing in the arts community as a whole. And you're here to talk about the National Endowment of Arts.
I am. So I talked about how the Arts Council here is boots on the ground for the California Arts Council, and then on a federal level, we have the National Endowment for the Arts. And the National Endowment was created in 1965. It is an independent body that funds artistically excellent art making and provides support services to artists and organizations throughout the nation. The recent administration has very recently threatened to completely eliminate the National Endowment, otherwise known as the NEA, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and to privatize the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And this is been proposed in the spirit of reducing the debt and reducing government spending, essentially. And on just a very basic math level, it doesn't actually help. The combined budgets of the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting account for just over 0.0002% of federal discretionary.
0.002%.
Right.
How much is that? Can you put a number on that?
So someone recently made this analogy, because we're talking about, so the NEA in 2016, their budget was $148 million. And we have a $3.9 trillion, not billion, trillion dollar budget for federal discretionary spending. One way to think about that is that if you made $50,000 a year and you wanted to significantly change your budget, the amount of funding that those 3 organizations gets amounts to $10.
$10 in comparison to $50,000.
Right. So you see that it doesn't actually remotely move the needle. And yet that $148 million has this tremendous effect on our entire nation.
How is that, Michelle Williams?
Oh, well, I mean, let me start locally and then I'll go nationally. NEA dollars partially fund the Arts Council's grants program. We are one of the largest providers of arts funding in this county.
How much did you give away last year?
$230,000.
$230,000 was given to local artists
and arts organizations
through the Arts Council.
Right, with support from various incredible foundations and the NEA. But the thing about that $230,000, we did a study in 2012 and 2013. The Arts Council did a study about the local economic impact of nonprofit arts. Just the nonprofit arts sector in Santa Cruz County, not including movie theaters or architecture firms or all the other industries that you could imagine are arts related, just the nonprofit arts sector drove $38.3 million in economic activity.
What? With that $200,000?
we see that as seed money for $38 million just in Santa Cruz County, just the nonprofit arts sector. And to think about this in more national terms, and I know I'm about to throw down some big numbers, but I think they're important here. So according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, arts and cultural production contributed more than $704 billion.
$704 billion.
To the U.S. economy.
And they want to eliminate $139 million.
It's really, frankly, it's absurd. It is.
So why? Why are they doing this, Michelle? I mean, you can only conjecture,
right,
of course, and give us your opinion. But it's kind of, mind-boggling to think about because this has not been the first time that the NEA has been attacked.
It's threatened every year.
It's threatened every year, but this time we actually have a situation at the government, at the highest levels, where there can be major changes.
So if, I have no crystal ball and certainly no insight into how certain minds think or operate, because so much is befuddling these days. But to me, it's two things. It's symbolic of what is important to the current administration, and there is a large portion of part of our Congress who's talked about defunding the NEA and undervalued it for many, many years, and in a way it's energizing that base. And the really fundamental problem about this is that not only fiscally is it a totally ridiculous thing to do, it's not even a rounding error in the budget, right? The NEA works on things that the current administration says they care about, such as new infrastructure, jobs, a stronger economy. These are all things where the arts are a proven ally. And so it's not even penny wise and pound foolish. It's absurd and it's foolish and it's ridiculous to think about cutting these agencies that are the agents of our cultural expression. Cutting the arts is a way of oppression. It's a means to silence voices that otherwise wouldn't be heard. And the fact that the arts do these powerful, wonderful, incredible things for our world, and they're being threatened as, even though they're nothing but budget dust, comparatively speaking, what this administration or any administration should be doing is quadrupling the NEA's budget if they want jobs, if they want a stronger economy, if they want a more tightly knit United States of America. And if they're not doing that, then what is it that they want from this country? And what's interesting to think about is that the United States already is one of the most pathetic funders of the arts. It's true. We are behind. Oh, and forgive me. I used to have this right here. Yes. So we are behind Germany, the UK, Finland, any number of developed countries in arts funding. As far as percentage goes, we already dramatically underfund the arts. And so to further undercut this incredible investment in our community, it just doesn't make any sense. And going back to the local level, so the NEA funds our grants program. They also fund the Cabrillo Festival for Contemporary Music. They also fund Cuumba Jazz. They also fund arts education program initiatives. Hundreds of thousands of people in Santa Cruz County alone benefit directly from NEA dollars. The one thing we do in the arts, we know how to stretch a dollar. We know how to make an incredible impact.
And Santa Cruz in general.
Yeah,
right?
We're
bootstrappers.
That's what we do. And
we make miracles on pennies.
Exactly. But we need those pennies.
Yeah.
We really, really do. So it's deeply upsetting and it's deeply confusing, and we simply can't let it happen.
Okay. So
what do we do about
it? Brings us to this very big question, because people are feeling, I have to say, I'm feeling a bit desperate, a bit anxious, a bit fearful. Tell me, what can I do? And maybe it'll make me feel better.
Sure. Well, so, the first thing I want to acknowledge is that in this really crazy time, we all have to pick our battles.
Exactly.
There's so much at risk. There's so much at stake, and we all have to choose what we're going to fight for, or we will go under. I feel that personally. Every day I have to think, okay, what's the thing I'm working for today? But there are many of us who are, with some regularity, calling our elected officials, statewide and federally. This is something to insert into those conversations. If you want to call your elected official about a certain, proposal for someone in certain areas of power in in our federal government, and you want to oppose that or support that, you can also say, and federal arts funding is incredibly important to me. I do not want you to vote against the NEA.
So, Michelle Williams, I've seen people talk about, I'm seeing this on Facebook feeds and this, that calling doesn't do anything.
Oh, it does. Calling does. I deeply believe this, and my husband, who I'm going to call out now, worked in state government as the director of communications for a state government, and he. Phone calls are really all that matters. That emails can be tallied, that faxes can be tallied, but having someone call from a zip code of an elected official and say, I voted for you, this is important to me, that matters. They tally those votes. Of course, you have, or those calls, you do have to be within, the voting base, but it does matter. And the more we can put pressure on our elected officials to make good decisions, they simply have to if they want to keep their jobs.
Right, but when you say that California seems to have a different flavor than the rest of Washington, D.C., like how much can our senators and our representatives do for us?
Sure. So two things about that. I don't think we can ever underestimate the power of a lot of voices, even in a blue bubble such as California. The more our elected officials know that thousands upon hundreds of thousands of us are behind them in this work, can you imagine what it must be like to be Can you imagine what it must be like to be a liberal progressive Democrat in Washington right now?
I know.
The more support we can give our elected officials, the better off they're going to be in not feeling alone and terrified themselves. That's one thing. The second thing we can do is we all have friends across this country, right? Like what is social media good for if not for connecting with people who don't live next door to us, right? And I'm confident that everyone who's listening right now has friends who might be blue in a red state. Or, you know what, I'm going to take it back from that. The arts are a nonpartisan issue. They're a birthright.
They should be.
This is not about conservative, liberal, progressive, Republican. It's not about that. This is about something that is our birthright that helps every single human being on this planet. So no matter how anyone voted to encourage the continuation of federal public funding for the arts is something that serves all of us. So encouraging our networks in states where perhaps this is a more critical issue, reaching out to your friends saying, hey, your senator voted against this last time. Will you call them and say, this is a really important thing for all of us. I hope you'll call your elected official and tell them to keep the NEA, to keep public funding for the arts.
All right, Michelle Williams.
There's one more thing we can do. Do we have time for it?
Of course.
So there's an organization called Americans for the Arts, and they are an advocacy body for all the arts in the country. And their CEO Robert Lynch has already sent a letter to the new administration asking that not only do we continue the NEA but to increase funding, he'd like to go back with a petition with 100,000 signatures on it. 1 million signatures on it would be extraordinary. And that petition is simply to keep funding for the NEA and support it. And that can be found at artsactionfund.org.
Okay, artsactionfund.org.
That petition can be
found. And I'll put
there.
that up on our website along with the podcast of our show today, Michelle, so that people can get that link. And so it's an online petition that you
It's an online petition. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so calling our senators and House representatives, asking with our probably other requests that our elected officials stand behind, and hopefully increasing funds to the National
Endowment for the Arts.
The NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, to continue the federal support of that. And then also, don't you think that maybe there's ways that people can individually help the Arts Council of Santa Cruz?
Absolutely. We show up every day to save the world. That's what we do. We want to save the world
on
a
dime.
That's right. By supporting youth in our after-school and in-school programs, by providing artists grants to be those voices that we need so desperately right now, to help organizations have the inspiring collective experiences that we all very much need to be together and communal around a positive common experience right now. There's so much that we are doing on a daily basis to try to help this community thrive and this community just keep our spirits up when we all have so much to fight for. And that's what we do every day.
Oh, Michelle Williams, Arts Council of Santa Cruz County. Michelle has been the executive director for 7 years now and has been a big push behind some major changes that have been happening at the Arts Council. And I think that if you are an artist out there, go ahead and go to is it artscouncilsc.org?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and take a look at their website. The grant cycle is opening up. There's two every year, so there'll be one in the fall, so you don't have to worry if you miss this one. But go ahead and take a look at it. Just start the application. It will save your information. It will not be for naught. And then when you have the bandwidth in the moment, because if anything, what we need to do now is make as much art as possible, and again gather in celebration of our community and our expression of our community. Michelle Williams, thank you so much for all that you do, and of course everyone that stands behind you at the staff at the Arts Council, and then everyone who helps fund the Arts Council, all of those individuals and corporations that you work so hard to connect with and get together so that we can have a strong, I feel we have a very strong Arts Council, and thank you for that. It
takes a village. There is an incredible team behind all of this, but thank you so much on behalf of our whole team.
Oh, Michelle Williams, she is the executive director of the Arts Council of Santa Cruz, and she's been talking to us today about how important the arts are in our community, both here at a local level and on a national level, and the threat of the National Endowment of Arts that's happening right now, and what we can do about it by calling our elected officials and telling them that we do not agree with that type of elimination of funding. In fact, we need it to be increased. And go ahead across those state boundaries and try to activate all of our friends that are all across the United States to call their elected officials, and hopefully we can push back this threat. And Americans for Art.
Americans for the Arts.
That's
the petition
right.
At the artsactionfund.org.
So there you go, folks. Now you know what we can do. Thank you, Michelle, for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I hope to have you back when we talk about ebb and flow and all the
Absolutely.
incredible events that are happening in the next couple months in Santa Cruz and Watsonville.
Yes.
Thank you.